Welcome back to the next video in the series. For this one, we're going to introduce AXIOM Examine, its user interface, and the various explorers available to examiners. Within this video, we're going to demonstrate navigation of the AXIOM Examine user interface. We'll discuss the different AXIOM Examine explorers, and we'll talk about the different methods you can use to launch AXIOM Examine to review an existing case. There are different ways we could launch AXIOM Examine to open an existing case. From the desktop, I could simply double-click the icon to launch AXIOM Examine. Once the program opens, I have the option to browse to a case or open an existing case from the list of available items shown here. The third option is to open a File Explorer window and browse to the location on disk where you have a case stored and locate the entry case.mfdb. You can then open that case within AXIOM Examine by double-clicking. By default, your case will open to the case dashboard in AXIOM Examine. However, this can be changed in the settings menu. Well, let's take a moment to review the case dashboard. On the left, you'll see you have Case Overview highlighted. From the Case Overview column, we have the Case Processing Details card, which includes information entered in the Case Details screen of AXIOM Process at the time of case creation. Above that, the case summary notes can include the examiner name, which will default to using the same examiner name as entered in AXIOM Process at case creation, but can be changed if another examiner is completing the evidence review. There is also a case summary text entry field where notes can be added during review of the artifacts recovered, if desired. The case information card includes links to the case information and log files created during processing. This will include information about the settings implemented when the case was processed. In the middle of the case dashboard is the Evidence Overview column. This includes a list of the evidence items added to the case during processing. The evidence number is carried over from the information entered during case creation in AXIOM Process. Examiners can add notes here in the text entry field labeled Description and even add a photo of the evidence item using the Change Picture link. For each evidence item, there is also a link which is labeled View Evidence for this source only. Selecting this link will transition AXIOM Examine to the Artifact Explorer and apply a filter showing only the artifacts which were sourced from the chosen evidence item. We'll talk more about filtering in a later module. On the right side of the case dashboard is the Places to Start column. Information displayed here will vary depending on your evidence sources and the artifacts that were recovered during processing, but we'll cover just a few to give you an idea. The Artifacts Category card includes a histogram view of the parent artifact categories available in the Artifact Explorer, along with a count of corresponding artifacts. Each of these is a link, which will again transition to the Artifact Explorer view and apply a filter showing only the artifacts for the chosen artifact category. Unlike the link discussed earlier for the evidence sources, the links here would show results for the selected artifacts from all of the evidence sources in your case. The Tags and Comments card will be populated with information from tags created during processing for hash matches, media categorization, or by examiners during review of the artifacts. The Magnet AI categorization will include tags created for any items matching the criteria for the selected Magnet AI categories that have been enabled during case processing. Scrolling down, we can see the Keyword Matches card, which includes artifact matches to the keyword list loaded during the Case Details section of AXIOM Process. As with the other items in the Places to Start column, each of these is a link which will transition to the Artifact Explorer view showing matching results for the selected keyword. Finally, the Potential Cloud Evidence Lead card at the bottom of the Places to Start column, or the link to Potential Cloud Evidence Leads on the far left of the case dashboard, are an excellent source of potential data in a case outside of the physical evidence items you may already have. In modern digital forensic investigations, the expectation of locating indicators of connected cloud accounts, such as iCloud or Google accounts on mobile devices, or cloud storage and social media accounts on computer evidence, is almost expected. The links for potential cloud evidence leads will transition you to the Cloud Insights dashboard, which can provide examiners with usernames along with potential passwords and tokens for any of the supported cloud platforms which were discovered during case processing. Additionally, the Cloud Insights dashboard will provide information regarding access and recovery methods of cloud-stored data for the specific platforms and the different potential artifacts which may be available from these platforms. The Magnet Forensics Training AX320 Cloud and Internet Investigations course is an excellent source of information regarding cloud-stored data and provides an understanding of the different authentication methods cloud platforms support, along with the different acquisition methods available and the volume of data and various artifacts which can be recovered. If you'd like to return to the previous screen, simply select the Case Overview link in the navigation pane. Before moving from here, I'll select the Explorer dropdown at the top of the screen to show a list of explorers available within AXIOM Examine. Again, we're currently viewing the case dashboard. But you also have the Artifact Explorer, Connections, Email, File System, Media Explorer, Registry, and Timeline. Now we've just covered the case dashboard and we'll now move to the Artifact Explorer view. This is likely where you'll spend the majority of your time in AXIOM Examine. As with many things in AXIOM Examine, there are several ways to navigate the user interface. I could select the Artifact Explorer from the drop-down list, or I could use the keyboard shortcut indicated Alt+2. Next to the Explorer drop-down, also notice the Home button, which allows you to return to your Home Explorer from anywhere in AXIOM Examine. As a reminder, this by default is the case dashboard, but can be changed in the Settings menu. In the Artifact Explorer, there are several areas which you will need to be familiar with in the user interface to effectively use AXIOM Examine. First is the filter bar across the top of the display. Each of the items listed is a filter that can be applied to the artifacts shown to help you locate items of interest. As an example, looking at the full case, I currently have 401,931 artifacts in view. If I were to select the Evidence drop-down menu from the filter bar, I could choose just the SanDisk USB device and apply that filter to only see the artifacts sourced from that evidence item, reducing the total artifacts in view to 308. Also notice the background of the filter bar has now changed to yellow, indicating I have a filter in place. Whenever you have a filter applied within AXIOM Examine, the filter bar color will change to alert you to that condition. I can return to my original view several different ways. First, I can select the Clear Filters button at the top right of the filters bar, or I could use the Evidence drop-down again and select the Reset button to remove that portion of the filter. This method is useful when you have a combination of filters applied and may only want to remove a portion of them. The Artifacts Explorer is divided into four main sections. The navigation pane on the left, consisting of artifact categories and artifacts, the evidence pane in the middle, which allows you to select individual artifacts for review either in the evidence pane itself or in the details pane on the right, and the fourth section of the Artifact Explorer is the Tags, Comments, and Profiles pane, which stays collapsed to the side of the screen until you need it. Let's take a look at using each of these sections. For the navigation pane, you will notice bold artifact categories which can be expanded to see the related artifacts they contain. If I were interested in browser activity, I might expand the web-related artifact category, and I am presented with all of the browser source artifacts in this case listed in the navigation pane, and the content of the evidence pane updates to reflect my selection. If I were specifically interested in downloads completed with the Google Chrome browser, I could simply locate that artifact in the navigation pane and select it, with the evidence pane updating according to my selection. Focusing on the evidence pane, I can now see a list of 15 artifacts for Chrome downloads. The top one, which is a download for Skype setup, is automatically selected. There are column headings for the different artifact fragments or details associated with this download, and a horizontal scroll bar at the bottom of the screen which I can use to see the additional columns. These columns will vary based on the artifact selected. The columns in the evidence pane can be resized to allow the content to fit. They can be reordered. I can sort on a column by left-clicking to apply an ascending sort and clicking again to apply a descending sort. Additionally, I could right-click or utilize the hot dog menu to select more options and hide a column from view if it contains data that I'm not interested in, or I can perform a filter on column, which will allow me to perform a text search for the content of that specific column. Filtering on columns is particularly useful when you have numerous artifacts listed and are looking for something specific. Closing the search box for Filter on Column will again direct our attention to the Evidence pane. At the top of the Evidence pane is a drop-down menu showing Column View. Selecting that will show the other views available that may be useful depending on the type of artifacts you are viewing. While the default column view is useful for things such as web browser downloads, you may find Conversation View more suitable for reviewing threaded chat conversations, and World Map View helpful for reviewing geolocation data. Notice that by selecting one of the other views, in this case World Map View, the content available to me in the navigation pane updates to only show artifact categories containing geolocation data. Returning back to the column view, I'll again expand Web Related, select Chrome Downloads, and find that artifact for the Skype Setup download. Let's take a look at the Details pane. When you have an artifact selected in the Evidence pane, all of the artifact fragments for that selection are shown in the Details pane. This will also provide a source link showing where in your evidence set this artifact was sourced from, and other content may be displayed here depending on the artifact selected. In the example here for Skype Setup, we can see the source link shows a path consistent with the Google Chrome browser and information in the artifact fragments for location indicating a table name and record ID within that SQLite database. Using this same artifact as an example, we can create a tag for this Chrome download. With Skype Setup selected in the Evidence pane, I simply click on Tags, Comments, and Profiles tab that's been collapsed to the right side of the screen. From here, I can add this item to one of the existing tags, or I have the ability to create a new tag by simply selecting the link for Add New Tag. We're now given a text entry field where we can provide a name for the tag, and then we select OK to apply that tag. Once an item has been tagged, you can add a comment using the Add Comment feature below. We'll talk more about tagging and comments and managing tags and comments in an upcoming video. At the bottom right of the AXIOM Examine window, you'll see it currently displays time zone UTC. If I hover over that, the edit link appears, allowing me to open the Manage Date and Time format window. By default, AXIOM Examine is going to use our system date-time format and display timestamps in UTC. However, we can change these based on our specific needs. Alright, let's close the Manage Date and Time format window, and I'll go ahead and collapse the Tags, Comments, and Profiles tab. At the top right of that pane, I can see the two right-pointing chevrons. Selecting that will collapse that pane. Now let's take a look at the File System Explorer. As before, I could use the Explorer dropdown and select File System, or utilize the keyboard shortcut shown. In the File System Explorer, we'll find a similar arrangement to what we had with the Artifact Explorer. You have a navigation pane on the left, with entries for the evidence items added to this case, an evidence pane in the middle, which will update based on your selections in the navigation pane, and a details pane on the right, showing information about any selected item in the evidence pane. As an example, I'll expand the entry for the USB device in this case. I can see there's one logical partition with a volume label of my USB, and expanding that, I can now see the folders that exist within that USB device. If I select the entry here for PICS, the evidence pane will update, showing the files available within that folder. The first item selected is a JPEG image. In the evidence pane, I can scroll across the columns and I can see information including the file extension, the logical size, created, access, and modified times, and hash values. Directing my attention to the Details pane, I have a preview of the JPEG image, and scrolling down in the Details pane, I have additional information similar to what we have in the Artifact Explorer view, where we have an item selected in the evidence pane, and the various details are listed here in the details card. One thing unique to the File System Explorer at the bottom is the text and hex view, which provides a hexadecimal and ASCII representation of the content of the selected file. Notice at the top of the File System Explorer, we again have a filters bar with specific criteria unique to this view. At the top of the evidence pane, you'll see a drop-down menu which is currently set to selected folder only. Choosing that menu, I can also see there is an option for all subfolders. Now let's take a look and see how this works. Leaving the default of selected folder only, if I select the parent entry for the USB device, showing the entire logical partition, I can see the subfolders and files stored at the root of that device. By comparison, if I toggle the drop-down menu to all subfolders, AXIOM Examine then presents a recursive view showing the files and folders at the root of the device, as well as the contents of all of the subfolders on the device. Within the File System Explorer, I can left-click on any of the column headings to apply a sort. I can reorder the columns, just as we can in the Artifact Explorer view. I can also perform a filter on column if I have a particular file name or extension that I'm attempting to look for on this USB device. Well, next we're going to look at the Connections Explorer, which provides a unique way to visualize your evidence and its association with other items in the dataset. As the name implies, Connections shows how artifacts in your case are interrelated or connected with the other artifacts in a case, and is something that must be built as a post-processing option in AXIOM Examine. You can enable a setting to perform this automatically if you'd like, and we'll cover that in an upcoming segment on AXIOM Examine settings. If I use the Explorer dropdown and select Connections, we'll probably be a little disappointed in the results. Once connections are built, we actually need to locate an item of interest using one of the other explorers in AXIOM Examine and use that as a pivot point into the Connections view. Let's return to the Artifact Explorer, select Web Related, Chrome Downloads, and then using the Skype Setup exe file we were looking at earlier as our jumping off point into Connections. Within AXIOM Examine, links to the Connection Explorer are represented by this icon. For this example, we have connections links for the URL the download was sourced from, the file name itself, the path that it was saved on the local system, and the source file. Any of these connection links will transition us to the Connection Explorer view using that item as our primary node. Selecting the connections link next to skypesetup.exe, Connections Explorer uses mainly primary and secondary nodes. Primary nodes, such as skypesetup.exe, are displayed in magenta with secondary nodes in blue. Connections provides a graphical representation of our primary node as well as its relation to the other items, including the path the item was downloaded to, the URL it was downloaded from, and other indicators for the path that the file was saved to. Notice that when hovering over one of the secondary nodes, tertiary nodes come into view. The Connections view is interactive, and we can adjust the positioning of the nodes to better see the information they contain. Hovering over the secondary node for the download, I can see a tertiary node indicating the application this was associated with is Chrome. And this makes sense for the example here because we know that skypesetup.exe was a Google Chrome download. One of the other features with the Connections Explorer is I could double-click on one of the secondary nodes to make that my new primary node, rendering a new Connections Explorer diagram. And again, the diagram is interactive, meaning I can resize the nodes to better see the information they contain. And if I've moved to a secondary node, making it my primary node, and would like to return to my previous view, I can simply use the back button. Now, let's use the Explorer dropdown and switch to the Registry Explorer view. Many of the artifacts available to us in the Artifact Explorer view dealing with the operating system on Windows-based evidence are sourced from various registry hives on the system. The Registry Explorer view allows a way to validate those findings and to manually explore in greater detail for any items which may not be included in the Artifact Explorer view. The Registry Explorer view in AXIOM Examine is similar to that seen in the Artifact Explorer and File System Explorer. We have a navigation pane on the left consisting of the entry for our Windows 10 computer, as well as the system-wide registry hives, and then an entry for user hives. We have an evidence pane in the center, which updates based on our selections in the navigation pane, and then a details pane on the right, showing information about specific items we have selected in the evidence pane. One thing you may notice is there are multiple entries for some of the system-wide registry hives. The Registry Explorer view in AXIOM Examine will show not only the current and active registry hive, but also other copies of the registry hives which are located in the evidence, either through the registry backup or update mechanisms employed by the Windows operating system. The Magnet Forensics Training AX250 Advanced Computer Forensics course provides additional information about the Registry Explorer view and manually exploring the Windows operating system registry hives. Now we'll use the Explorer dropdown to switch to Timeline View. The Timeline Explorer provides a view of all evidence items with timestamps from both the Artifact and File System Explorers. The Timeline Explorer is useful if you have an idea when an event occurs and you'd like to see the activity on the system during that time frame. Or you might have already identified an important piece of evidence and want to try to build a story around it using results that occur before and after that event. The Timeline Explorer includes a visualization of time and an interactive graph where you can examine specific time frames, identify increases in activity, focus on a specific date, and try to establish patterns of behavior. Below the graph, you'll find timestamped evidence from the Artifacts and File System Explorers ordered chronologically. To help you review and analyze the evidence with ease, you'll find additional details and high-level categorization of the evidence by timeline category, such as browser usage, file and folder opening, user events, and more. Each item also includes key, supporting, and additional detail items to help you quickly find the most relevant information. When selecting an item in the timeline view, you'll see more artifact information. Depending on whether the item originated from the Artifacts or File System Explorer and the type and format of the artifact, you will have the option to view a preview of the artifact, review media categorization details, artifact details, or view raw file system artifact data in text and hex. While the timeline view is an Explorer with its own filter criteria, often you will find yourself in the Artifact Explorer or File System Explorer and you locate an item of interest that you then want to pivot into the timeline view. To see this in action, let's go back to the Artifact Explorer view. We'll continue using our Skype setup file from Chrome Downloads, and I'll draw your attention to the Details pane where we can see artifact fragments for start and end time of the download. Selecting this icon next to the start time of the download will bring up the Set Relative Time window. Using Set Relative Time, we can provide a range of time that we would like to see before and after this particular event. The start time for the download is 22 August 16 at 6:57:26 p.m. With the filter criteria I have provided, we will set a relative time filter for 5 minutes before and 5 minutes after that event. There are other options available, but this is a basic demonstration to give you an idea. I'll select OK to apply the filter, transitioning to the timeline view, where I can now see the activity on the system within that 10-minute window of time. Even filtering our evidence set to a 10-minute period of time leaves us with a tremendous number of artifacts to review in the timeline view. As with many things, finding a way to filter our results can help us to hone in on the items of interest to an investigation. The filter we have applied only takes into consideration the timestamps 5 minutes before and 5 minutes after the start time of the listed download. Because we're interested in the download for Skype setup, let's add a keyword search using the global search box here in the filters bar for the word Skype. That will narrow our results down in Timeline Viewer even further to only those that contained that string somewhere in the results. Additionally, we could take this a step further and stack additional filters for specific timeline categories, such as file download. That quickly narrows the results to only web-related artifacts for Chrome downloads, which is what we saw in the artifact view, which brought us here to begin with. But the Timeline Explorer again shows key detail, supporting detail, and additional details. These columns can be adjusted and resized to fit the content. So our key detail listed for these artifacts are for Skype setup.exe. They are from the web-related Chrome Downloads artifact category, and at the far left of the screen, I can see the blue color indicating that these items are tagged. Hovering over these, I'll even see the tag name, Chrome Downloads, which we applied earlier in the video. Our supporting detail provides the URL that these items were downloaded from, and the additional detail, in this case for the Chrome browser, is the flag indicating whether the downloaded file was opened. Returning to the filters bar, I can see the timeline categories filter heading has now been replaced with the bold text file download, because that's the filter criteria we have applied. If I select that, I can actually add additional timeline categories to this, such as file and folder opening. We'll still leave the file download category in place and stack this filter with it. From here, I can see additional operating system artifacts which may contribute to showing that this installer was launched by the user, including the creation of Windows prefetch files for Skype setup.exe, and later a prefetch file created for Skype.exe. Now let's use the Explorer dropdown to select the Media Explorer. Many investigations focus on the review and analysis of pictures and videos found on electronic devices, whether ICAC cases or corporate investigations searching for screenshots of intellectual property theft. Similar to the post-processing options for timeline and connections, selecting the Tools menu and then the option to build Media Explorer will begin this process. Again, examiners have the option to configure AXIOM Examine to automatically perform this action. As with other explorers within AXIOM Examine, the Media Explorer is divided into different segments, or panes, designed with common tasks associated with the review and categorization of media in mind. With the typical data set in modern investigations, even after using various categorization methods designed to assist in this effort, such as hash datasets and Magnet AI, media items left to manually review can represent a significant time investment. The Media Explorer provides several features designed to assist investigators with this often time-consuming process. Now, the first set of features to look at are the different drop-down menus at the top of the Media Items pane. These affect the grouping, sorting, and the overall display characteristics of the Media Explorer items. We can use the Group By drop-down menu to select the grouping of the media items. For instance, by default, we're using the evidence source as our grouping. Next to that is a Sort By drop-down menu, which allows us to sort the images that are displayed in media items based on any of the characteristics listed. Finally, a very useful feature is the Stack By behavior. By default, any copies of a media item with an MD5 or SHA-1 hash match will only be displayed one time in the media items pane. As an example, the icon for 7-zip has an indicator below 2 of 2, indicating there are 2 copies of this file. If I hover over the thumbnail, I see a larger preview showing the path to one of the instances of this file and the +1 in parentheses indicating a second copy. This effectively reduces the number of items examiners have to manually review. The last drop-down menu at the top of the Media Items pane affects the size of the thumbnail image displayed within this Explorer. By default, we are on small, but could change this to medium or large to fit our preferences. As with other Explorers in AXIOM Examine, the Filters bar across the top of the display provides another method for grouping and sorting the items displayed. For instance, in this dataset, we have an acquisition of a Google Pixel 3a mobile device. I could use the Evidence dropdown to filter to only that evidence item to see just the items sourced from that device. Other sorting and filtering methods are available within the Media Explorer. Let me clear the filters here, and we'll take a look at the leftmost pane inside of Media Explorer. First, you'll notice investigation leads. The filter criteria here can be useful depending on our specific circumstances. As an example, I could expand the entry for items with geolocation data, and I can see within this data set I have 278 items which contain geolocation data. Simply checking that box, followed by the Apply Filter button at the bottom of the navigation pane, results in a quick filter showing only the 278 media items from this data set with geolocation data. At the top, we can see Matching Results now displays 131. As before, we have media stacking enabled, so we have 131 unique images. Because there are copies, there are 278 in total. Again, I can hover over the first item listed showing 2 of 2, indicating we have this image located in a path consistent with the Dropbox application, as well as one other copy. Looking at these filters a little further, if I use the Clear Filters button at the lower left of the navigation pane, that will remove this filter for the geolocation data. I could now choose to only show the items captured with or created with one of the onboard cameras from the Google Pixel 3a. One of the easiest ways to do that might be to use the Camera Details section, expand Camera Model, and just select Pixel 3a. Now there certainly could be other items with EXIF data from another Pixel 3a, however, this is a good starting point. We'll apply this filter. We can see now we have 142 matching results using the image stacking. With the Media Explorer display, you'll notice the Tags and Comments pane is expanded, with the expectation you will be tagging and categorizing media items in this location. If you would like more screen real estate for reviewing the media items, you could always collapse that pane and have it available to expand later if needed. For any of the media items, you can simply double-click to open in that picture preview window, providing a larger view that can be zoomed or rotated to better review the content. Well, let's close the picture preview window by clicking the X at the top right corner. Then we'll clear the filters we've got in place, and we're going to scroll down and take a look at some of the video filters that are available to us in the Media Explorer. Many of the other filter categories can be used for video items as well, but there are some unique ones in the video attributes section. For instance, if we wanted to filter to all of the video items of longer duration, say media duration of 1 to 5 minutes, we can apply that filter and we can see that we have 5 matching results. One of the other features that's useful for us is by clicking on one of the thumbnails, we can see a larger film strip preview of the video with a thumbnail broken out every 10% of the playable length. In the lower right corner of the video thumbnail, I can see this video is 2 minutes 21 seconds in length, and if I use my mouse to scrub across the thumbnail, the video will display at a variable rate depending on how fast I move the mouse. This is very beneficial when reviewing large quantities of videos and trying to quickly determine their contents. There's one final set of features to look at within the Media Explorer. These are often referred to as officer wellness features and were originally designed for ICAC investigations. However, they do have benefit in other types of investigations as well. The process of grading and categorizing media and manually reviewing picture and video evidence can be extremely time-consuming One of the features enabled by default is to blur media that has been categorized as illegal material. Selecting the drop-down here would allow an examiner to choose between displaying that media or blocking it from view completely. Another option is to automatically mute sound for any videos that are reviewed. And finally, we have reminder options, available with the Setup Reminder link. Selecting that will open the Manage Media Categorization window. From here, we can select a reminder type to remind examiners to stop categorizing after a certain amount of time, or to stop after they've categorized a certain number of media items, and also to set a media categorization end time. This will allow examiners to designate a certain time of the day to provide a reminder to stop media categorization activity. The Manage Media Categorization options, including blur media, automatically muting sound, and to set up these reminders, are also available in the media categories within the Artifact Explorer view when using the thumbnail display. For Axiom Cyber, the final Explorer to look at in Axiom Examine is the Email Explorer. As with some of the others we've looked at, this one must be built through post-processing options selected in the Tools menu, from Tools, and then Build Email Explorer, or via Axiom Examine settings. Let's select the Explorer drop-down and review the Email Explorer. The Email Explorer provides a way for examiners to review email in a folder structure that mirrors the application where the data was recovered. Viewing email messages in a format similar to the way a sender and recipient of those messages would have originally viewed them may provide additional context that may otherwise be missed. Email Explorer works like a native email platform and provides filtering and searching capabilities, helping examiners to focus on a specific time or message thread. Expanding the entry for Dashner Win10PC, then isaiah.dashner@gmail.com.ost, and selecting Inbox, I can see the messages presented here in a familiar way to many email clients. The messages are sorted by date and time, and for the first message, I can see an icon here indicating there are attachments to the message. With this message selected, I can also see the sender's name and email address, the subject of the message, the recipient's email address, a date and time for the message, the attachment names for the message, and the content of the message. The Details pane on the right side of the screen also provides hyperlinks to those email attachments, and selecting one of them will bring up a preview window within the Email Explorer view. Hopefully, this video has provided an introduction to the Axiom Examine user interface, the various explorers available, and the different methods available for launching Axiom Examine and opening an existing case. In our next video, we'll continue looking at the features of Axiom Examine, including the menus and settings, along with a variety of post-processing options.